Okay, so today's topic is all about how to navigate through Christmas season confidently. Many of us who have grown up in houses and with family where Christmas wasn't always the happy time and it tended to bring up a lot of stress and amplified the challenges or dysfunctions within families. Christmas can be quite a challenging time for a lot of people. It can also be like really lonely. It can feel really exhausting, a little depressing, sad. We can have really good moments as well of connection where we meet, where we're probably connecting back with cousins or people in our lives that we don't see often either. So it's not all doom and gloom, but I'm bringing in the perspective of the reality of Christmas, because what I find is in society, we can have a little toxic positivity around Christmas where it's meant to be this happy time for everyone, and it's not always the case. So today I want to support people through how to plan their Christmas, because often we can sort of just go in fingers crossed hoping it won't be so bad, and then it tends to be sometimes even worse. If we're doing the work on ourselves, it will amplify and make it more stressful in some ways when we get back to family. And the reason for this is when we're going to therapy, we're learning to feel our feelings and experience our world and what happened with us growing up in more detail, because we're actually dealing with it and we're not avoiding it with coping mechanisms. This is why it can be really difficult to go back to relationships that are not healthy, because your body and your emotions will tell you, and the activation in your system will tell you that there's something not quite right. And when you're doing the work, there's no avoiding it, because we're not using coping mechanisms like alcohol, or whatever your coping mechanism is. We're no longer using those, so, or we might be minimizing that, where we don't want to just drink during Christmas or something like that. So it amplifies our feelings and our activation in the body. Oh, Ella's dreaming, my dog Ella. Okay, so things to consider when planning for Christmas. Making a decision. Am I going to go back home for Christmas? So a lot of people who are away don't live in their hometown, away from immediate family like their parents. Are you deciding to go back home? What kind of headspace are you in to go back home? So I always think of it as be radically honest about this, because often we might want to be drawn back in from a place of guilt or shame. And when we do that, we're self abandoning. So we really want to be honest with ourselves about visiting home again with heaps of family around, whether people go on like I know people who go on holidays together with their immediate family, so their parents and their siblings, and they've got kids as well. So it can be quite a lot going on in the environment, and it can be really stimulating and stressful at times. So we need to decide whether what the decision is. Will I go back home? If I go back home, how do I want that to look? And we'll get into that in a moment. So also, to feel into our boundaries, we need to feel into what feels heavy, light, what's our yes and no. And then ideally, what do we want? So I've got the nervous system calendar here that I give out to people. And this is here to say, okay, when I go back home, where will I be? You can even predict it as so you can plan for this. Where will I be on the autonomic nervous system ladder? So we've got ventral vagal up here. This is like a happy, connected, curious place to be. Some people's and some members of your family you might feel really connected with. You may feel playful with, and they're considerate and kind. So there's that. Now, you also have experiences of maybe fight flight. There's some members of your family where you might go into a bit of conflict or fight flight. So being aware of who are they, who sort of impacts and influences this activation in you in the fight flight zone. And then we've also got shutdown. Now, who in your family influences your shutdown response. So a lot of people, an example of this could be with parents. One parent might be less scary, less kind of maybe just more go with the flow, and the other one might be more rigid, controlling, needs things to go smoothly, is really sort of has to have things a certain way. So they might elicit a bit of a shutdown response where people around them, and I've seen this happen, people around them will fawn and people please just to keep the peace because they know that they've got to step on eggshells, because if they don't, then the one of the parents will get upset and be, maybe they will shout or they will do something that other people in the family don't want the kids to see, or they don't want to experience themselves. So we've got to be really radically honest with ourselves of where am I on the autonomic nervous system when I go back home to visit family, when I visit my parents, what sort of stress response do I go into? It's really crucial to know that about ourselves. Ideal Christmas. Now, this is an activity that everyone can do who ends up watching the replay as well. Kate, this is what you can do as well, is what would be your ideal Christmas? And just write it down for now, because I'll come back to you on this question. We're going to go through this together. Actually, I might do it with you now. What would be, like, if you were to dream into it, what would be your ideal Christmas?
Me?
Yeah.
It's so interesting, this topic, because I've always felt funny about Christmas and I didn't realize. I think it would be like having a beach holiday with like my partner, and not seeing my family.
Yeah. This is good I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment. So this is such a great example of your ideal Christmas would be at the beach, right? At the beach with your partner. At the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what would be happening? What are you doing at the beach with your partner?
Well, just relaxing, really.
Relaxing.
And eating nice food. But yeah, just relaxing and not having. It was interesting you asking me to make. About when you think of your family, where are you on that scale? And I'm like, oh,
Yes.
well, I already am anxious about it. So
Yeah.
I'm in fight or flight usually when I rock up there, waiting for someone to, waiting for something to happen, and it may not, but that's where I'm at with them at the moment because I'm doing the work. And I found that really interesting, all your comments about that.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, there you go. So you're in that, so you might find that in that environment because you're leading in,
I can't really be bothered with people that.
because you're leading into that environment from a place of fight flight, you might find yourself going into a shutdown response and a fawn response.
Yeah, I probably do.
Yeah, and that's just us making a bit of, like, the good thing about this is, like, if you choose to go back to family and to spend time with family, you can be much more aware of this process within you. And anyone who watches the replay, you can feel into and become an observer of this process, and it then doesn't have such a hold on you. So that's something to
Okay, because I'm worried about how I'm going to be, but I might not actually be like that. But it's kind of like yourself. Is it? You're it's going to happen because you're thinking, yeah, like it's sort of
So
like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something like that.
great comment, because so a self-fulfilling prophecy is more of what I've noticed in my practice and work that I'm doing. Self-fulfilling prophecy happens more on a subconscious level.
Okay. Yeah.
When we are bringing it's really good, because often, like, people think, if I think or if I talk about negative things, then negative things will happen to me. But that's not necessarily how it works, because if we keep it all inside, we're not unpacking the information of what is happening for us. So, like, the understanding of where do I go, fight, flight, then shut down, dorsal, and then the understanding of your individual process in that, we now know. So we hypothesize, right? We're like, okay, we guess that might be what happens. So if that happens, and we're going to come to this, if that happens, what could I do if I'm sitting there? What can I do when I'm in fight, flight, or when I notice myself going into a fawn or people pleasing or a shutdown avoidant response? What can I do for myself? But we'll come back to that.
Yep.
So your ideal Christmas would be relaxing at the beach with your partner. And that's sort of like, is there any other details you can give there? So like, would you be eating certain food? Like what sort of,
I'm just eating nice food and seafood and stuff.
yeah.
I don't know, having like cooking nice food for Christmas and stuff. Yeah.
What
Yeah,
activities?
just pretty much just low key, I guess.
Low
Um,
key.
I think we've chosen a pretty good Christmas day so far. Like it's not at the beach, but
Yeah, so this is nice to know, because on what your ideal Christmas is telling me is that you want something that just feels peaceful.
grounded and peaceful, please. Yes. And I think we've
Grounded
actually
and peaceful.
done that different. Like, this is the first year I'm already actually conscious of. This is the first year I'm actually like, hey, that's not actually. I know it needs to be different, but I need to fine tune that. That's why I'm here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good on you. I love that. Okay, we're going to come
I
back
know
to
I want it differently than it was in the past.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to come back to this. And so what I'm going to do is, with that information, we'll come back. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm just going to pop you on mute, and I'll unmute you when I'm done. Okay, so we've got your ideal Christmas. We've got the feeling state that you're looking for, grounded, peaceful. Okay, this is good information. Now, what is stopping you from having that Christmas? So have a think, feel into it. What is stopping me from having that Christmas? And just see what comes up for you. And when you're ready, you can share what your answer is, Kate.
Yep.
Yeah,
So I'm not that great with the technology.
that's all right.
I wrote down guilt. Like I think I feel guilty that I don't want to spend Christmas with my family, like the Christmas day. Like I
Right,
feel
okay.
guilty. Like I should be wanting to spend time with my family every year. That's what we do. Yeah,
What is, and now I want
I
you
think
to feel into this, what would be the worst case scenario, that guilt, like we're just going a little bit deeper on this. What's the worst case scenario if you
yeah.
didn't spend time with your family during Christmas?
Oh, that they would abandon me, I guess. Like they would just be like, well, if you're not coming to Christmas, then me.
So, and this is
You know,
what
yeah, I feel like I'm obligated to show up to every family event, whether it's Christmas, birthdays, or whatever. If I don't show up, then it also means that I don't care for them. It's like, I don't know, yeah.
so yeah, and so this is
I've got
really
this like
good.
family duty thing, loyalty sort of stuffs.
Okay, great.
Like
Okay, got that information.
not showing up to,
And just for a
yeah.
moment, I'm going to speak into this because people who are watching this would be able to relate so much to what you're saying, is the guilt that we feel. And guilt can come from that place of, it can also feel into shame too. We're not entire, sometimes we uncover stuff and we realize it could be shame as well. But when we feel guilt and we
Mm,
feel fearful of abandonment, what can happen is we're making decisions from that place. We may have evidence
yeah,
with this as well, and the evidence could be that in the past, when you've expressed a boundary, you've had, and this is on a subconscious level, silent treatment. A family member or friend or person has disconnected from you, has pushed away, pushed you away. So we've had negative associations with kind of stating our boundaries. So that
Yes,
guilt
definitely.
that we feel, yeah, and that guilt that we feel drives us to self-abandon and go and spend time with family when we don't want to. So it's really
Mm.
important to know that. But it will feed into what we're going to speak, what we'll speak about next. It's really important because what you've just identified is one of the biggest fears people have in this situation. This is the fear. Okay.
Not,
And
yeah, like it is being abandoned. And so it's like, and so, but you're actually abandoning your own wants and needs. Yeah.
that's exactly right. So when we have that fear and we take action from that fear, we are self-abandoning. And we kind of like
Mm.
a lot of people who have the same belief will want to reaffirm it. So they'll be like, just push through. Everyone just does it during Christmas. You've just got to suck it up and get it done. So there's people out there who believe that, you've
Mm.
just got to do it for the family. But that's generally, and I'll speak into that. I'll just mute you for a moment, just so the video comes through. Generally, what happens with that is their own boundaries and belief systems are what they're projecting those onto you. So if I don't have boundaries and I self-abandon, I'm going to encourage other people around me to do the same thing. Okay, so guilt and making sure people, what have I put here, are not upset with us are driving factors in our decisions. So often it's a heavy or light feeling. So I decide. So like when you felt into, and I'll come to you in a moment, Kate. But when you felt into your ideal Christmas, would you say that it felt light? And then when you feel into going to your family, does that feel heavy? So just notice it in yourself. I'm this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but anyone who's listening to this, feel into your ideal Christmas. How does that feel in your body? What does that feel like? And it sounded like for you, Kate, grounded and peaceful feels quite light. And then we think about going to Christmas. It's like, how does that feel for me? It feels heavy, like if I was going to a Christmas that I didn't want to go to. Generally, that's a really good indicator of our boundaries. So we're fearful sometimes of how family will react. And what we need to know deeply, deeply is that the way that a family member reacts is not a reflection of us being good or bad. So if I set a boundary with kindness, love, and consideration, the way that the other person responds has zero reflection of who I am as a person. It's their own activation or their own discomfort and dysregulation around your boundary. And generally it's people who self-abandon and don't have boundaries themselves. So if people push you away because you have set a boundary, then they are not thinking of your well-being. They are thinking of their own self and what they want and their own needs. And it's actually quite a selfish act is to think of ourselves. But we're not doing it from a place of, when people push our boundaries, they're not doing it from a place of they don't like you. They're actually doing it from a place of, I really want you there and I love having you around. So they're trying to push your boundaries on that. But it's, on the other hand, it's actually can feel quite invasive and upsetting when people push our boundaries. People don't do it because they don't like us. They tend to do it because they want us around, or they want a certain thing. But we've got to really take care of ourselves and protect our own well-being, because someone else is not going to protect our well-being, especially if that person themselves is quite highly anxious or depressed as well, or going through their own mental health challenges. They will not be looking at our well-being when they push on our boundaries. So we've got to be really aware of that. And if people judge us for our boundaries, that's a reflection of their own internal struggles with boundaries and honouring themselves. That is the truth of it. So we've got to often remind ourselves of this, because our body will have, if we were pushed And if we grew up in a family where boundaries were not even a thing, we didn't even know what they were, our caregivers, parents, our siblings, everyone had, like, we didn't have space of our own. They used our stuff. Um, our parents didn't really give us privacy. Things like those are examples. If that was what it was like growing up, then when you get to an older age and you start to express your boundaries, it's going to feel really uncomfortable at first, and your feelings, the woundings will come up around, I'm a bad person, have I done something wrong, or maybe we'll get upset with the other person. So there will be things that will come up for us, and it's very much, our boundaries are very much in the body. So what I mean by that is relational trauma that's happened in relationship with another, and on a human biological level, we are made to connect. That is in our biology, in tribes, community and connection. That is how we survive. So on a innate, which means we are born with it, biological level, we are born to connect. So when someone disconnects from us and pushes us away, when we're little, that's our survival. So we actually go into activation, fight, flight, shut down, as self-preservation. So boundary work is the most crucial work we've got to do as adults if we never learnt, or we learnt that setting boundaries was dangerous, because it's a physiological, biological, and innate response that we have to humans. So if I am in front of a human expressing a boundary, it may make me go into a fight flight response, because I fear neglect, abandonment, disconnection. I fear that they won't like me and they'll push on my wounding. So fear can be really strong. I know people who go into a fight flight response, but even further can actually go into a dissociative state, which means that they have lost connection with the present moment and their body, because it was so scary to express a boundary. So boundary work is not up here in our mind. It's not about nailing the mind stuff. It's about practicing it in our body. And in the therapy that I do, one-on-one, I practice with people in role plays in a safe space, because that's how scary it can be on a physiological level, on a subconscious level. So examples of boundaries are, I would have liked to come home for Christmas to see everyone, and I also want to spend Christmas with, so maybe if you've got a partner, if you've got your partner's family, something like that. So what I can do is come visit you at another time. So that's one way we can express a boundary in a healthy way. Another way is, I find Christmas time stressful and I would like to come see you once it's not so busy. I miss you all and look forward to spending time with you where I can, when I can. So we don't necessarily have to push people away with our boundaries. What it is I can say, maybe during Christmas, so this is just an example if you don't want to go back to family during Christmas, if it feels heavy. We can have other ways of visiting family. So for example, for myself personally, my family live in Victoria, I'm in Queensland, and for this Christmas, which I would have loved to go back and visit everyone and visit my niece and nephews, however, it hasn't lined up for me specifically. And so I have spoken to my mother. She's been really great about it, and I'm lucky in that sense, where I asked her if it was okay. And well, I didn't ask her because I just said, but I said, I will be coming home after Christmas when it's not so busy. And I would love for all of us to get together during that time if we can. And I'll make it so I'll let everyone know before I come home. So I've made an alternative. That is something that you can do. But even if the alternative is, I'll come visit you a week after Christmas, or I'll come visit you at a different time, and still connecting there. Some of us don't have that option because you might be in conflict with your family. So that's a different experience. That's a different story. It's quite an individual thing. And what my examples of boundaries are, it's just about saying I statements. I find Christmas sometimes stressful. So like it's expressing your experience of Christmas. So I've decided when I come home, I will not be staying in the family home. I will be getting my own accommodation so I can have my own space. That's a boundary. So just giving examples of I statements, bit of vulnerability, and also meeting maybe not meeting in the middle where you self-sacrifice, making a decision on how you will connect and spend time with loved ones that will not cause you to self-abandon. So that's the most important part. So first, take care of you. That's huge. First, take care of yourself. The most important person is you and taking care of you, and then everyone else around you. So have boundaries on how much time. So that's another one. How much time do you want to spend with family? And how much money as well. There's a lot of present giving, gift giving at this time of year. So start to write down even how much money am I willing to spend on my niece, nephews, on my cousins, auntie, uncle, on my parents. Like what is the budget there, and what am I comfortable with in that sense? And then also with time, how much time do I want to spend? Am I going to spend a couple of hours, or am I going to spend a whole day? This is an individual process and there's no wrong or right about it. It's what suits you and your nervous system. Even if you just connect it with what would be best for my nervous system, that's how you want to see it. Be prepared for feeling dysregulated. What will you do when this happens? So Kate, we spoke about this. What could you do when you're feeling fight flight? What could you do for yourself when you're in the shutdown and noticing that? So even preparing before you go into that space, saying knowing people, situations in with family dynamics that will activate this response. So it's just around preparation. What will I do in that situation? So coming up with some ideas. So for me personally, if I go back home and visit family, I love playing with my niece and nephews because that actually is fun for me, and it regulates my nervous system as well, and I can connect with them. So it's actually playful. I can be my child self with them, and so I do put time aside for that. I also go for a walk as well. I take myself out of the house and I'll go for a nature walk and ground in nature. I want to show up the best version of myself when I visit family, and I want to be kind, considerate, and caring. And I know that they can, because that's where relational trauma was created. I know for myself that my capacity is very low. So if things start to get stressful, I go into fight flight. So I can become defensive, argumentative. So that's my default. So I know that about myself. So I know for me, going for a walk in nature, grounding, taking some space, playing with my niece and nephews, that's what helps me stay regulated. When I start to feel dysregulated to a point where I'm like, okay, I think I've had enough, then I end up leaving. So that's my boundary around that. I know my process around that. And I'm a much nicer, caring person because of that. So that's something to consider. What is it that can help you stay in that space of connection, love, care, and consideration? So create space, whether that's not staying at home. Sometimes people go back, and because it's all they've got is accommodation at home, and they stay on the couch or in a spare room or with parents, or maybe a sister or a cousin or something like that. But what can happen is it can really dysregulate us. We can find it hard to sleep. We can feel that it's really quite stressful. So it's not always a nice or pleasant experience. So I'd really consider getting your own accommodation. But if you can't do that, just considering how long can you stay in that space before your nervous system is at capacity and you can't sort of be that caring, considerate, nice person. Follow and track your nervous system. Be prepared for what you can do when you're feeling activated. We've already covered that. And prepare for recovery. So we all need recovery when we go into that space. Be prepared to nurture and nourish yourself when you come back home. That's and to not just keep going, because this Christmas season, it's holidays, it's going out, for dinners, it's going on holidays and doing all these things. So really important to slow down and care for yourself again. First person to take care of is yourself. Nurture and nourish yourself and take space for yourself, because we can all often get caught in the holiday sort of season too. Okay, so Kate, how is all that for you? What would be your takeaway from today so far? I'll just unmute you. I think you have to. You might not be able to do that for
Yep.
you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. So I think I've started to do some of this stuff. Like I've arranged to see my family on the 28th. But I think it's be prepared for dysregulation and what I'm going to do, and then probably have a plan with my partner about that and tracking it. I think that's really interesting. And then setting a time frame of what you're comfortable with and making that very clear, because it's a lunch.
Right.
They can be really, and then I'm not staying there. I'm just going and coming back. And preparing for recovery, that's the thing I think I didn't do. Like when that's something I underestimate, I think. Like leave space the next day just to like chill out, because I have done that. I noticed one the last time I like had problems, I went from here to there, and it was too much. I didn't get to actually recover from like, sort of being activated. So allowing time around that stuff. So that's kind of, and I like to suggest, I've got nephews and I'm sure I could get them to play with stuff. So I like that idea as well. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, I love it. That's so great. And good on you for creating a plan around this. What I look forward to is hearing about your experience and how it goes after you've created a plan. Because I know for myself, when I did, I had
I
a
guess I feel a bit, yeah. I still feel a bit nervous about it, but I feel better about it knowing that I have some kind of plan. And what the goal is, as you said, was to actually be kind, considerate, and caring, like is what you actually want to experience. But if you're in fight or flight, obviously it's going to just sit. The other thing is I feel like people like to tease me and stuff, so I've got to figure out how to. That's like I'm the youngest. It's like their go-to thing. Or they ask boundaryless questions. I need to learn strategies around going, oh, that's not cool, man. But like, nice way. Like not like
that's such a great point around family dynamics, in the sense of, okay, so my family, their habit is to
your boundary stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so their habit is to tease me, right? And so for you to be able to say, okay, I don't like, even to feel into it and reflect on it or journal on it, like, what is it that I don't like about that? And then being able to be vulnerable in those spaces and say, hey, I know that this is something that we used to connect on, like when you tease me, and I know it might not be coming from a place of hate or anything like that. It might be even coming from a place of love. But for me, it actually makes me feel however it makes you feel. Like, how does it make you feel when they tease you?
I don't know, like I'm stupid or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
It's usually around. Yeah. that I'm immature, or I don't know. It's usually around that kind of thing. Like,
Yes. Yep. Okay.
that I'm
So
immature, or
yeah.
I
So when
don't.
you tease me like that, it makes me feel like I'm stupid and immature, and I don't actually like it. So I would really appreciate if you didn't do that.
Mm, okay.
How's
Mm,
that?
sounds easy in theory.
And you're
Yeah.
right. You're so right because it will bring up
They've
a
been doing this for 42 years, right?
yes, yes. So it will be a practice. It will be a practice. And I know Kate works with me for those of you who are watching the replay. So we'll be also working on that on in one-on-one therapy because exactly what you said, it's been happening for so many years, 42 years you said. So then what will it's such an imprint in the body. So even expressing that boundary can be quite a dysregulation in the body. And so just noticing that for yourself, oh, yep, I'm in a fight flight. But what is actually supportive for fight flight, why we're in it? It's because it's a sign to stick up for ourselves. It's a sign that defense is needed in this. But what can happen is if we do it from our activation, we then fight more and defend. But if we do it from a place of so if we do it from a place of vulnerability and awareness, it will have a different response and it will come out differently as well. So noticing your activation in itself will bring you a different awareness as well. I couldn't hear what you were quite saying, Kate. I think the reception wasn't great, but what was that you
Oh,
were trying to say?
yeah, it's not the greatest reception, is it? Oh, I can't find where I wrote it down about um, not being brought up with boundaries and your family not having boundaries and them self-abandoned. Oh, I just found that stuff really interesting. But
Yes,
um,
yes.
oh, if I don't have boundaries, I self-abandon and will drag people into that same kind of. I don't know. I just found all that really interesting. Um, but yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
like
it's
the boundaries are different for different people. But yeah, it's like I want, and then I'm like all of a sudden, and I'm doing the work, and they're not, and I've always been perceived as the immature one or something, and it's like, oh, this is really weird. It's a very this like
yeah, and often you
uh
can now you can see it
so
as
trying to
I'm
exercise boundaries is really hard because they're just like,
yeah, I'm leading the way. You can see it as I'm leading the way in being more kind, considerate, and loving because this is it. So what you're
oh,
speaking into with your
that's
family
how I'd
members,
like to be. Yeah, but I feel like I just get agitated.
yeah, and we all do, we all
Yeah.
do. But what
I don't
with
want to be that
the
person. Yeah, like
and with family and it's called enmeshment it's and even if it sounds like enmeshment, right, it's because growing up if we didn't have boundaries, enmeshment means how I think you think, how what I like you should like as well, how we
yeah.
act as a family you should have the same values and behavioral things. So enmeshment is I can't see you as an individual. And if I can't see you as
Mm,
an individual, I'm projecting what I believe is right or wrong. And that is when we
yes.
use, yeah. And so we're not individuating from family if we are saying, okay, if we accept that enmeshment, we're accepting their values. So whoever is sort of, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a caregiver, a family member, whoever it is, a sister, brother, but if we're accepting the enmeshment, we're accepting saying, "Oh, I'll do what you say to keep the peace," or I won't have my own needs. I am, you know, similar to you.
Mm,
As soon as we start to have boundaries, we're saying, "Hey, I'm different to what you.
mm,
I'm different to what you believe. Like I have different beliefs. I have different needs. I have different expressions, like that, and
mm,
creativity." So that's what we're doing when we're setting boundaries.
yes. And I can see that there's very like strong like um I don't know that expectations that you sort of all think the same kind of things and do the, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we all do that in a way, but then when we start to express boundaries, we realize other people think differently to us and have their own boundaries, which is a really beautiful
Mm.
thing, because what that means is we start to see each other on a deeper level. So I see you by saying, oh, okay, what are your boundaries? Because this is mine, but what's yours? And we all feel seen in that and taken care of.